Alright, so today we're going to be talking about a vehicle that exists, and this video is by LazerPig. We've seen one thing by him, and this came very, very highly requested. In fact, let's see, how many people asked for this? Okay, so it was originally requested by Chauncey, and it has been given a thumbs up by Dherg, Arco, Alfarius, the Burb of Judge, and Lazarus DW, as well as some kind of funky thing by Lord Alfarius. The funky parrot. Okay, yeah. Stuff, emotes. I get it. Emojis, whatever. Anyhow, this is about the Bradley Wars, and it's entitled Colonel James Burton is a Pathological Liar. I don't know. I know about the Bradley fighting vehicle. I don't know what this video is about, except, of course, the Bradley fighting vehicle. I never heard of the Bradley Wars, but we're about to find out. LazerPig did a very good breakdown of something called, what was it? Something to do with the tigers. Basically, catching people, basically talking straight out of their ass when it comes to tank knowledge, of which I don't claim that much of, so whatever. In any case, we're going to go ahead and check this out. We're going to see what this is all about. Here we go. Nothing else to say about it.
There is a legend among members of the armoured fighting vehicle enthusiast community that given a big enough room, given enough members in that room, enough beer and enough time, the topic of discussion will inevitably turn to anal fisting. However,
what?
Put a non-member in that room, or put anyone from that other side of the community we don't like to talk about, the self-proclaimed reformers, and you may hear of the legend. Like tales of old sung around the campfire to the younger generation, the names Pierre Spray, Mike Sparks, Blacktail Design, and James Burton are spoken with hushed tones or with disgust. These are the four horsemen of the military vehicle apocalypse, the self-styled leaders of the reformers, and people that every member of the AFV fan club has become intimately familiar with. Welcome to the greatest secret drama war on the internet.
Oh my
Welcome
god.
to the Bradley Wars.
Oh my god, this is community drama?
The
Sign me
F-35
up.
was born of an exceptionally dumb kind of piece of Air Force PR spin.
Pierre Spray is a defense analyst and professional horseshitter. Author of about 90% of all the horror stories you've heard about the F-35, he was one of the designers of the F-15 fighter jet and has used this qualification to brag his way onto talk shows, in particular Russia Today, where, for money, he is willing to spend any amount of time going on about every problem with any Western aircraft, regardless if that problem exists or not.
Nice.
Unlike the others, Spray does know what he's talking about. Circa 1965, his ideology in military defense is outdated, and he refuses to keep up with modern-day developments, relying almost entirely on the 1960s energy maneuverability theory by Thomas Christie, which is a method of developing thrust weight, aerodynamic drag, basically the flight characteristics of an aircraft to create the perfect dogfighting machine via World War II fighters and very early subsonic jets.
Okay.
Spray was brought in as an analyst at the time the Americans were concerned, rightfully so, that their jets, which had only been designed to fire missiles, were in danger of being shot down by less advanced aircraft designed to dogfight, and this stems from the little-known Battle of Palmdale, California, where two advanced US aircraft failed to shoot down a drone flying a World War II plane, though the US planes involved were early 1950s designs and far from perfect. The ideology of the inferiority of missile planes over dogfighters is still a belief he holds today, as do many others in the military aviation forms, applying 1940s logic to modern-day and future aircraft, and ignoring all the developments in aviation combat such as stealth, radar, the more advanced missiles and guidance systems, all of which have proven in every battle, in every military exercise, and in every test since, that the rules for dogfights have changed significantly since the glory days of the Second World War.
I would anticipate so.
Sparks, on the other hand, is a different kettle of fish. A former National Guard combat engineer, he is more commonly known for his fanatical obsession with the M113, which he strongly campaigned and failed to have renamed the Gavin. He seems to firmly believe the M113 can perform almost any role required by our modern military, and even at great personal expense, designed a flying M113, which he envisioned as a sort of paratroop tank he called the Aerogavin. He
What?
runs his own website, still trapped in the 90s, under the name The Combat Reform Group, where his maddened rambles on the need for battleship aircraft carriers, gigantic submarines and radarless planes can be viewed for anyone wishing an evening's entertainment of rabbit hole diving.
Please tell me none of these things are legitimate. Don't tell me these are legitimate.
He considers himself the director of the First Tactical Studies Group, a non-profit civilian organization designed to look like an actual military organization, which describes itself as an elite group composed of military and civilian professionals, aircraft and ground vehicle designers, dedicated towards creating an excellent, morally sound, efficient US military capable of defending the freedom both at home and abroad that has a moral compass. He has a seething hatred of the US Marines and is well known in many military forms for his bizarre kitbash models, but his biggest claim to fame comes from his series of books and radio interviews in which he proclaims that James Bond, a fictional character from the Ian Fleming novels and later films, is based on a real person and exists. That's not a joke, by the way, he genuinely believes that.
I can't judge. I don't know these people. I don't know this drama. I'm just watching the disaster unfold.
Blacktail Design, or Blacktail Defense as he's sometimes known, is the comic relief of the bunch. Slightly more reserved, yet equally as entertaining. It is often believed he and Mike Sparks are the same person. This is due to a format and not knowing how IP addresses work. Trust me, they're different people. Blacktail is more known for his furry Facebook, or whatever the fuck this website is called, page, which endlessly lists his designs for funny winged aircraft, as well as, which he and his fans proclaim to be the work of genius. He is well known in the heroism community for his bizarre belief in the superiority of Nazi German technology, which has included his firm belief that the German King Tiger tank is a better tank than the modern M1A2 Abrams and would kick its ass if any were still in use. Hint, there is a reason they are so rare today. But most famously,
What?
he is known for this: the Tiger Wolf main battle tank. A tank design so comedically bizarre it is reminiscent of a 1930s design. It features a non-existent Wankel diesel engine, which, if you don't know engines for comparison, it might as well be a cold fusion reactor. A First World War artillery piece as a main cannon,
Why?
crew of 6 with an onboard engineer, and so much ammo crammed into such a tight space, if the tank were ever penetrated, it would...
Nice.
instantly. He is a contributing
Yeah.
writer on the internet's greatest source of military disinformation, militarytoday.com, where he famously wrote about himself. Blacktail is a very
God.
mysterious
What?
person. He is well known for a specific audience interested in weapons and military equipment. He is right. Blacktail himself has no military, government, or industrial background. However, his knowledge regarding
wrote this
weapons
about
and
himself?
military equipment is simply astonishing. At some point in his life,
wrote
he
this
had
about
no
himself.
shortage of free time. Blacktail has deep knowledge in rare military machines, prototypes, and developments.
He literally wrote this about himself? What? Oh my god. No, I have a hard time saying that I did a good lore video. I have a hard time saying that, I did a good any kind of content. I have a hard time saying that about myself. Wow. Anyhow, moving on.
That many people have never heard of before. Also, he knows a lot of interesting facts. Blacktail is rather unique among military experts, as many others are not equally knowledgeable. Channels like Discovery are asking him for an interview. Views are often at odds with those that are widely accepted. Consequently, he has become a controversial figure on the internet. He runs a series of YouTube videos which show text over slideshows, yeah, we're into that weird side of YouTube again, in which he rails against anything modern and American. You're starting to see the pattern here, I hope. And if you were to ever take a drink each time he gets something wrong, you'd be drunk by the end of the video, and legally dead by the second.
Okay.
But this video is not about any of them. As much as I would enjoy rambling on about the many failings of these three men and the many, many people like them, this video is about one particular man, the worst of them all, Colonel James Burton. Burton is a different specimen. Much like Pierre Sprey, he once held an important position within the US military and was an Air Force colonel until his forced retirement. He became aware of a certain level of corruption within the military procurement section of the Pentagon, and after he was tasked by Congress to investigate the failings of numerous US military projects, he took it upon himself to order a full, rigorous testing of the Bradley APC. In doing so, he uncovered a mass conspiracy within the deepest levels of the Pentagon, in which the shortcomings of the Bradley were ignored in order for the various commanders in charge of the project to secure more funding and promotions, with tests being modified to cover up the Bradley's disastrous design flaws, which would have made it a death trap had it ever gone into service. Burton, however, wins over the confidence of his men, cracks the whole case wide open, and in a series of publicly thrilling hearings, obtains a complete redesign of the Bradley, saving the lives of potentially over 50,000 men, in spite of every attempt short of an assassination by the US military to silence him. He would write all about this in his book, The Pentagon Wars, Reformers Challenge the Old Guard, which was later adapted into a black comedy starring Kelsey Grammer.
Money plane.
And all of that would have been fantastic, if any of it were true.
Oh. Okay. I'm not a big fan of internet drama. It intrigues me when it does happen. I don't go looking for it, though. There are some people in the 40K community that I don't exactly agree with. Like, vehemently disagree with. But I try to stay away from that kind of stuff, but oh my god. I don't mind hearing.
Anyway, Burton's service records are still classified, but from
Okay.
what's publicly available, the first significant note of interest where his name pops up is a design he chaired for something called the Blitz Fighter. Burton proudly
looks
boasted
stupid.
himself as being anti-tech and described technology such as radar, guided missiles, and thermals as high-priced junk. His logic being that the US Army was relying too much on overspending to obtain a technological advantage over the Soviets, and too much of this technology was flawed and unproven. A belief he
No.
maintained, even when proven otherwise.
No.
And a belief that many of his
Oh my god.
followers still
I'm
maintain.
leaving that- I'm leaving
so
that where it
he
is.
submitted a design for a low-tech A-10, believing this design would fly at treetop level, shooting Russian tanks with its 30mm cannon. And I can think of several reasons why this wouldn't work.
Из пушек за 1 секунду залпа в цель посылается до 80 снарядов. При этом их начальная...
So, after being told his design would at least need a radar, Burton responded proclaiming that radar can't be used to find tanks, nor can it tell the difference between a tank and a truck full of refugees. After his design failed to turn heads and was eventually rejected, Burton found Pierre Sprey, and the two of them came up with the idea of the Joint Live Fire Test Program.
The Joint Live Fire Test Program.
My head hurts.
Who thinks up this nonsense?
Congress, sir?
A program in which Burton would take a number of military vehicles and subject them to an assured destruction test to see what would happen. The
Okay.
US Navy and Air Force politely declined to be part of Burton's test, seeing no point in wasting taxpayers' money by blowing up billion-dollar prototypes to relearn what they already knew. However, the US Army agreed. This is the big first difference between Burton's story and reality. In
Okay.
the film, Burton is a naive young colonel appointed by Congress. In reality, he has previous experience with military procurement. The US Army volunteered to be part of the program but were not forced by Congress nor anyone else. It's also possible, and this is just a theory, that owing to his failure to secure interest in this World War II style tankbuster jet design, one could say he had a bit of an axe to grind.
Okay.
And grind that axe did he. In the movie, one of the more entertaining and memorable scenes involves the troubled development of the Bradley's design, starting off as a modernization to the M130.
A lot of military hardware and equipment had very interesting, development cycles, but continuing on.
3 generals consistently interfere in the design process, constantly adding things until...
Gentlemen, what you have before you is...
a troop transport that can't carry troops, a reconnaissance vehicle that's too conspicuous to do reconnaissance,
and a quasi-tank that has less armor than a snowblower, but has enough ammo to take out half of DC.
And this is the general belief of the military reformist crowd and why the Bradley gets so much hate, even today.
Why?
In fact, I've had this line repeated at me by military reformists, word for word, so many fucking times. And unfortunately for them, nothing in this scene actually happened.
Oof.
The Bradley was designed from the start as having a turret. As this may shock you, the Bradley is not an APC. Now, this is where we're going to get a little bit technical. You see, the idea of an APC, an armored personnel carrier, is a vehicle that can travel through a hot zone and drop off troops on the front line. This is something seen as almost an outdated idea as something else has come along. At the time of the Bradley's creation, the US was carefully looking at something else, the Russian BMP. This was also an APC, but rather than simply drop off the troops and retreat, the BMP would hang around, providing fire support with its large autocannon. This was the birth of the infantry fighting vehicle. While its armour was thinner than that of a tank, it still required sufficient anti-tank weaponry to take one out. This posed a problem. If your infantry APC'd into battle and met the opposing infantry in what was essentially a light tank,
Yeah.
your infantry would be at a severe disadvantage.
Extreme
The US
disadvantage.
needed was an IFV of its own, so the Bradley was conceived. A vehicle which could take troops into battle, offer fire support when they arrived, and deal with enemy vehicles through its tow launcher. Burton may have gotten the idea for this prototype Bradley through knowledge of its predecessor program, the XM734, which was the requirement for an APC with a closed ventilation system that could operate in an irradiated nuclear wasteland.
That's
without
always
the crew
fun.
or anyone inside the vehicle requiring hazmat suits.
That's always
Yeah,
fun.
that was an actual thing they did. America was planning a war post-apocalypse. Trust me, Fallout ain't got shit. Throughout the film, Burton
Wow.
is self-portrayed as the hero, constantly fighting the army in order to have a live fire test performed. In reality, the test was performed numerous times, but it was Burton's own failure to understand the testing protocols which led to his frustration and the frustration of his superiors, seeing any deviation from blow the Bradley up as evidence of a conspiracy.
Yeah, this is something I was talking about the other day. You cannot simply cherry pick an argument. You can't do it. And what I'm seeing here is this is what happened with this guy. Now, I can't say for sure. All I know is I'm watching this, but this sounds like he was trying to cherry pick an argument because he hated it. Anyhow, continuing on.
Well, it is true that many of the ways the army screwed with the test results as portrayed in the film did happen. What is not explained is why. And this is where we get into the science. If you
Okay.
blow up a Bradley with an anti-tank round, you've blown up a Bradley, and you've got scattered Bradley parts spread out over a mile-wide radius. The army was already aware that Bradley could not stand up to modern AT rounds, and this
Yeah.
was by design. Bradley was expected to fight infantry weapons and autocannons, not sit and absorb hits like a tank. It was built to those specifications, with the measures required to build a vehicle that could withstand modern AT weapons considered far too impractical as to render the vehicle next to useless. Rather than relearning what they already knew, the army insisted on smaller point-by-point tests, so things like the fuel tanks being filled with water could more easily demonstrate what was happening to the inside of the vehicle when hit,
Right.
without spreading that evidence over a wide radius. The same with the ammunition being filled with sand, a way of showing which ammunition box was hit, which one was most vulnerable, etc., etc. Rather than
This
simply
makes
admitting
sense.
any of this, Burton proclaims conspiracy, and adds fuel to the fire by claiming other weapons developed by the army were subject to the same biased testing, such as covering a BMP with heating elements in order to test a heat-seeking missile. In truth, so irrelevant is Burton's testing, by the time any of it is even proposed, the army had already been made more than aware of most, if not all, of the Bradley's shortcomings, and was developing the Bradley E1, which came with significant improvements to the survivability of the vehicle. Burton would later take the credit for the implementation of this vehicle over the original prototype, even though he had almost no involvement in it. After the testing,
Wow.
the Army produced a vehicle to Burton's recommendation, referred to as the Minimal Casualty Baseline Vehicle, a design which moved almost all of the fuel and ammunition to the external of the vehicle. This made the vehicle considerably larger and exceptionally more vulnerable to light artillery.
What?
Burton's inability to understand what would
So that was his idea. That was his idea. You're going to take the fuel and ammo and put it on the outside of... That's stupid.
happen to the Bradley if it was disabled in the middle of a combat zone is about on par to his overall knowledge of armoured vehicles as a whole. But I'll say there is a reason tanks don't typically stay still for very long when under fire.
كتيبة حمزة الله أكبر.
This redesign does appear in the movie, with Burton claiming it was the Israelis who ordered the modifications, not himself. The final straw for Burton comes from the Bradley's final redesign. Part of his demands was the vehicle be fully combat equipped, and part of that equipment was 2 large water tanks. These water tanks had been placed close to the centre of the vehicle so as not to off-balance its centre of mass, but if the vehicles penetrated, it was likely the water tanks would get hit, dousing the fire inside. Burton considered this cheating, and after writing his report it became clear to the US Army that Burton wasn't interested in creating a safer vehicle. He was interested in proving the army was wrong.
Right.
His sole
That
interest was
sounds
not
like
to save
it.
lives, but to grind his axe against those who had denied his perceived genius aircraft design. After this, the army promptly transferred him. He denied this transfer and instead opted to retire, claiming he was forced into it.
Right.
The story
Okay.
of Colonel Burton, at least on the official side of things, has ended. His ability to influence decisions within the Pentagon are about on par with mine. Burton has gone silent on the whole matter, and any information on him outside of a few obscure references are difficult to find since he refuses to be interviewed or filmed, and even finding pictures of the man is suspiciously difficult. I couldn't even find a copy of Burton's official report as depicted in the film, even though he claims it to have been leaked to the press. And most of the news
Okay.
outlets who reported on the situation cite Burton's memoirs, and later ones the film itself, as a source. I was
What game is this? This looks interesting. Anyhow.
able to find a few sources, which include a detailed report on the effectiveness of live fire testing, with reference to the Bradley, made in 1987, and the transcripts from the hearing itself, which tell a surprisingly different tale from the one Burton proclaims. For
Okay.
example, Burton claims the project cost
14. More or less.
14.
14 million. Yeah.
What did you say, General?
Billion.
Billion?
while in reality it was closer to 8 billion and was actually under budget, having expected to cost a total of 12 billion overall. There's also the 1999 book by historian W. Hayworth Jr., which goes into the extreme details in regards to the tests Burton demanded upon the Bradley, as well as this 1986 report on the improvements made to the Bradley both prior and post to Burton's testing, and why these upgrades were delayed, citing disagreements between the Army Chief of Staff and the official designated to oversee the tests, though it does not mention Burton by name. This would back up Hayworth's claim that Burton would object to any test that did not meet his strict demands. The shots had to be hit from random angles and distances with varying degrees of ammunition, and the Bradley fully combat loaded and tested to destruction each time. Ultimately, this would have cost the US Army in excess of 100 destroyed Bradleys,
Right.
at a time where only 1,600 existed in the world, causing the project to go over budget and pushing the deployment date well back into the late 80s, possibly 90s, as Army engineers had had to spend months, sometimes years, poring over wreckage fragments trying to figure out what it already knew. The Bradley could not survive a hit from a modern-day anti-tank ground. There's numerous other issues to the point where I'm...
An infantry vehicle is not going to do that. It's just not. I don't understand what the problem is here.
Starting to agree with Grammar here.
Simply no other way. You fucking flyboy, you don't know jack shit about combat.
He doesn't. He doesn't understand American squad sizes. He seems to think aluminium is something unique to the Bradley. It isn't. That the design is unusual. It's not. Nor seem to fully comprehend what the Bradley would actually be doing on the battlefield, still envisioning it as nothing more than an armoured bus, an upgraded Frankenstein's monster of an M113. He is totally unaware of the existence of recon tanks, and he also seems to believe that the Bradley needs to be immune to anti-tank rounds, which is, firstly, impossible. It's an anti-tank round.
Right.
And secondly, neither the original Bradley Burton shows...
How are you gonna make something that an armored vehicle immune to anti-tank rounds? Armor-piercing rounds. How are you gonna do it?
The film,
I don't understand.
nor the original M113
that's just
are
silly.
immune to anti-tank rounds of their respective service periods. To any serious enthusiast, it is more than blatantly obvious that the reformers like Burton have no idea what they're talking about. Discussions on them typically take the form of a cringe-watch circus, and very little, if anything, they say is taken seriously. But the IFE enthusiast community is a very closed community, discussions rarely leaving the forums, and those forums split into their respective reformers and old guard camps with little crossover allowed by their iron fist-minded admins. So it's the regular man on the street, the everyday Milsim enthusiast boy who likes war documentaries and statistical fact sheets about their favorite...
Okay. The 41-year-old defense reformer. Stealth bad. Believes in Neo A2 AD feudalism. Don't know what that is. Carriers... Bullshit. Bullshit. Okay. 1999 Yugoslavia. I went there. What is that? Cites TNI. Uses video game screenshots as proof. What the hell is that? Uses peer spray as... I don't know, Slavaboo, Cinnaboo, coat threads, keep him fed with bullshit. The F-35 can't turn, can't run, can't climb. No, I'm not a fighter pilot. I used it at AC-7, so I know it sucks in real life. Oh, good. What?
Favorite vehicles. It would seem like Burton and the reformers are making valid points.
Hold on. F-35 thread bingo. You fuckers never learn addition. What? Stealth is not fucking pointless. F-22 is better? I don't know. F-16 dogfight test? Never fucking heard of it. Shitty range. Bullshit. Jack of all trades, master of none. But a jack of all trades and master of none is still better than a master of one. Engine fire? I don't understand. I don't... Helmet doesn't work?
Their ideology that modern warfare plays out like the battles of World War II, but with more modern equipment, plays into the ideas that the reformers present, and this of course has its knock-on effects. Misunderstanding, misinformation, and common sense tropes are the enemies of historical research, and any historian you talk to will have a horror story or two where their expert level of knowledge, gained through countless years of research, is frequently cross-examined and questioned by random members of the public who believe otherwise, basing their knowledge on bad documentaries, grade school teachings, and terrible, terrible websites. Years of badly researched, dramatized books and documentaries masquerading as actual historical information, constantly enforcing the fallacy of Nazi German technology was superior to its allied counterparts, gave rise to the Hiraboos, many of which would fall so far down the rabbit hole they would develop sympathies for Nazi Germany and Nazi ideology. Some would even become Nazis themselves. In the same manner, the Bradley has become a symbol of America.
Why do people do that kind of stupidity? Like, seriously, why do people do that kind of stupidity? I can talk about how the Spartans were the greatest military unit in the ancient world. I can talk about the Spartan phalanx system, the Agoge, their whole upbringing, their relationship with the Helots, all this other kind of stuff. I can pretty much do all that. It doesn't mean I'm going to take my baby to a hill and have it reviewed by a town elder. That's just stupid. That's just stupid.
Corruption, greed, and general incompetence, in spite of being an overall successful vehicle and well liked by its crews, with numerous published articles and quasi-military blogs and websites treating the film as if it were a documentary rather than satire, and the reformers have lapped it up. Pierre Spray and the rest of the so-called fighter plane mafia have openly bragged about their influence over the Pentagon from military leaders, advisors, and even the president, and have been rallying against projects like the Osprey and the F-35 for the better half of the last decade. And though I'll probably do a separate video on the fighter plane mafia later, trust me when I say in spite of everything they may brag, in spite of all their previous successes, they are now no more than a group of rich old men slapping each other on the back in self-congratulations over projects that were never really tested in combat against equal foes, and rail against anything they specifically don't have any monetary interest in, with their TV and news appearances hinting more towards someone who is scared of fading into irrelevance rather than someone with a genuine concern, becoming nothing more than the rent-a-critic for a rival government-funded news agency. If it was down to Pierre Spray, American troops would have fought Iraqi T-72s and M48 Pattons. If it was down to Mike Sparks, the lessons learned in regards to helicopter-mounted infantry in Vietnam would have been ignored to repeat the same mistake, this time with lightly armoured, slow-flying tanks. If it was down to Blacktail, America would be using foreign Second World War equipment, and if it were down to Burton, America's Armoured Fist, its infantry fighting vehicle, would have been grossly over budget, delayed by years, and vulnerable to something as simple as a hand grenade. The troops inside gunned down by MG fire as they tried to escape their disabled and now burning vehicle. Do not kid yourself into believing that these four horsemen have any idea what they are talking about. They don't. They may brag and boast about their knowledge and achievements, but they are not privy to any secret information. Everything Pierre and Burton referenced was declassified in 2013. And though for some you have to go to a salt mine in Kansas to read, which is impossible because of COVID right now, most of it is available on the internet.
Okay.
This means they have no clue what the full capabilities of things like the F-35 are, since most of that information is still classified. Spray himself was an avid critic of the F-22, proclaiming loudly that its onboard radar would give it away, that its IFF system was unreliable, and that it was an inferior dogfighter and slower than the F-15. Any of that sound familiar? Well, because the actual capabilities of those systems at the time were still classified. So Spray's knowledge of the craft came from comparing its maneuverability to F-15s at air shows, and his constant critiques of this aircraft led many to believe it was an inferior option to the Russian-built Su-27M. Once the F-22 Raptor was proven to be a vastly superior fighter to almost anything else available, Spray did a U-turn so big it was visible from space, and proudly added the aircraft to his list of planes he takes the credit for designing.
Right.
I could go on about these four idiots, and in time I may well.
So in
do
other words,
just
these
that.
four
I haven't
bullshit
even touched
artists.
on the actual drama.
Not touching it with a 20-foot
Marva
pole.
really probed into the depths of Sparks' true insanity, or the mountain of evidence that suggests that.
Wait, what? You... What?
The Spray had very little, if anything, to do with the design of the F-15. However, to prevent this video from going beyond the 7-hour mark, I'll wrap it up here.
Okay.
If I were to conclude, I would say these people are not the masters you're looking for. They are the Karens of the IFV fan club,
Wow.
refusing to wear their masks because they saw some post on Facebook that says they don't have to. You can listen to them if you want, but if you take their opinions seriously, you might find yourself becoming a laughingstock, and videos poking fun at you will be made by a 50-subscriber YouTuber with a stupid name. If you're still watching, I sincerely apologize. My name is LazerPig, and I consume more alcohol than a college fraternity.
There you go.
And for the record, when the Bradley and BMP met each other in the Gulf War, the Bradley kicked its fucking ass.
Alright, I love this. Subscribe for more historical nonsense to fill your empty life with. You know what? I like that. I'm a fan of that. Subscribe to my channel for more useless shit to fill your empty life with. That's wonderful. The I Am a Pole, the Legend of Piram, has been requested as well. And that's in the staff office on the Discord. Oh my god. That just... So, basically, LazerPig is claiming that those 4 people are just literal bullshit artists. And without any dog in the fight, he made a good argument, especially for the one guy. I mean, that just sounds contrived. In any case, that was the Bradley Wars. And all due likelihood, there's always 2 sides to every story. And there's always your truth, my truth, and the truth. So, I don't know how accurate this was, but at the same time, even if it was like 75% accurate, that's bad. That's just really bad. In any case, like and subscribe if you haven't already. I am checking out a whole bunch of different stuff lately. So, I've been getting into real-life tanks. Apparently, there is a whole thing about the Tiger. Halo. Apparently, now Dream SMP. I've never heard of this. I'm trying to figure out more about it. In any case, if you'd like to see something, I put the link for the Discord down in the description below. Jump down there. Jump into the Discord. The request for reaction tab is where it's at. And if you guys want to see something that's kind of like completely different than what I'm normally watching, something like this, for example, just go in there. If you see it already requested, just pop a couple of emojis on it just so it catches my attention. That's the reason I picked this one, because so many people were kind of boosting it up. In any case, that's all I've got for the day. And if you'd like to support the channel, I have a Patreon down below. I will catch you guys next time.